It happened at dinner, right after the waiter poured the wine. My mom looked straight at me and asked why I still didn't own a penthouse like my brother. She wanted the whole table to hear. I sat there, glass in hand, as the red liquid shimmered under the soft restaurant lights. The clinking of forks and murmurs of other diners seemed to fade, replaced by the cold weight of my family's laughter. Logan smirked, pretending not to notice the jab, but his eyes flicked toward me. I forced a polite smile, hiding the tension coiling in my chest. "Honestly, Harper," my mother continued, her voice sharp, "I just don't understand why you can't keep up with Logan. He's practically living in the sky, and you—" She paused, letting the words hang, the implication clear. "Still renting that tiny apartment." Laughter erupted around the table, a mixture of amusement and condescension. Cousins nudged each other, and even my father shifted uncomfortably, offering a weak smile that did nothing to stop the humiliation. I felt the familiar sting of being less than, the one everyone quietly, or not so quietly, assumed would never rise inside. My mind raced. I could feel the years of being overlooked, of quiet sacrifices, bubbling up. But on the outside I stayed composed, letting my fingers curl lightly around the stem of my wine glass. Calculated. Observing, Logan raised his glass, glancing at me with a faint, almost guilty smirk. I wondered if he truly knew how much of his success had been supported quietly, by someone who never asked for recognition. The thought gave me a strange mixture of anger and empowerment. And then my mother leaned in, her tone dripping with superiority. "You know, Logan doesn't just get the penthouse, he earned it. Maybe one day you'll learn what it takes." I set down my glass with a deliberate calm that drew a hush over the table. "Maybe," I said quietly, my voice low but carrying weight, "you should know the truth about who's really been paying for his success." The laughter died. Forks paused midair. Even Logan's smirk faltered for just a moment. For the first time that night I felt the room shift, the power subtly tilting, if only slightly, in my favored my name is Harper, and this was the night I stopped being invisible. And that was when the room finally understood who'd really been paying for his success. But to understand how we got here, you need to know where it all started. I was around 30 then. Old enough to know exactly who I was, and young enough that people still felt comfortable underestimating me. My name is Harper, and for as long as I could remember, I'd been the invisible one in my family. Growing up, our household had unspoken rules. Logan was the golden child, charming, ambitious, effortlessly getting praise for everything he touched. He was the future, the one everyone hyped up at parties, the one whose grades, internships, and achievements were discussed like trophies. Me. I was the stable one. The responsible, quiet daughter who made sure bills were paid, who handled the paperwork, the one who stayed in the background so the spotlight could shine elsewhere. Mom, Monica, had a knack for making her favorites feel untouchable, and Logan soaked it all in, never questioning it. Dad, Frank, tried sometimes, but he always deferred to her judgments, leaving me in the shadows. Praise was rare, and when it came, it was measured and fleeting. Mistakes, however, were magnified. I quickly learned that being loud, asking for recognition, or challenging the narrative only made things worse, though I built a life that didn't depend on their approval. By day, I navigated the high-stakes world of financial investing and real estate, a career that demanded intelligence, diligence, and patience, all qualities I had honed from years of being overlooked. My apartment was modest but organized, my car reliable and understated, my work ethic relentless. I didn't need accolades or validation. I needed results. Quiet wins mattered more than loud praise. Even my friendships mirrored this approach. I chose people who saw the real me, not the background daughter they assumed I would always be. I learned to anticipate, to plan, and to protect my independence fiercely. Harper, they thought, was harmless, predictable, unremarkable, and in many ways I let them think that, because it gave me the freedom to build quietly, without interference or unnecessary scrutiny. Looking back, I can see exactly how those dynamics shaped me. I learned diplomacy over confrontation, patience over anger, strategy over impulsiveness. I knew how to move through the world unnoticed, yet always in control. And the irony, That very invisibility would become my power. I didn't fight for attention. I learned early that pushing back only made things worse. So I built my life somewhere else. Quietly, carefully, and completely on my own terms. And that's exactly what they missed. By the time Logan started talking about the penthouse, it had already become part of his identity. Proof that he was exactly who they always said he'd be. Every conversation, every family dinner, revolved around his latest acquisition or investment. He spoke casually about properties, as if buying multi-million-dollar apartments were as simple as picking out groceries. The terrace has the best skyline view, he'd say, or, the valuation just went up another 15% this quarter. And everyone nodded, hanging on his every word, impressed by his effortless confidence. The mom's eyes would light up every time he spoke, and she rarely let a sentence pass without comparing him to me. Harper could take notes from Logan, she'd say, with that familiar condescending smile, as if reminding me again of my place. The comments stung less because they were new. They were part of the pattern I had learned to expect. Instead, I learned to shrink slightly, to make room for the applause he received. The penthouse itself became the ultimate symbol. It wasn't just a property. It was a declaration. The furniture, the skyline view, the parties, everything signaled that Logan had arrived. Guests were impressed, cousins whispered about it, and even friends of the family subtly praised his hard work. Yet Logan never explicitly claimed ownership. He didn't need to. By letting others assume he had earned it all on his own, he reinforced the myth that had been built around him. I watched all of this quietly, silently noting the growing narrative. Every toast to Logan, every laugh at his anecdotes, every wide-eyed compliment was another layer in the carefully constructed legend. And every layer made my lips tighten and my stomach churn. Not with envy, but with the knowledge that they were celebrating a story I had helped write without them ever realizing it. Dinner tables became stages for Logan's triumphs. The conversations always looped back to him. His deals, his insights, his penthouse, his rising reputation. And I remained in the background, a ghost, observing while quietly keeping the truth locked away. It was exhausting, watching the people who dismissed me marvel at what I had quietly supported. What they didn't realize was that while they were busy admiring the view, they'd completely missed who built the foundation underneath it. And I was about to stop holding it up. Then Tara entered the picture. She had opinions about everything and volume to match. From the moment Logan brought her to a family dinner, the energy shifted. She was image-obsessed, always talking about optics, how things looked, what they projected, who noticed. She pushed Logan to live bigger, louder, higher. Bigger dinners. Better neighborhoods. A lifestyle that matched the story she wanted to tell about him, and by extension herself. Suddenly, the penthouse wasn't just Logan's success. It was their brand. Tara talked about hosting, about views, about the kind of people who lived in buildings like that. My mother ate it up. Every gathering became unbearable, dominated by talk of skyline photos, wine fridges, and how proud she was that her son had made it. That was around the time the messages started coming in. Quiet notifications on my phone from the property management company. Late payments, missed deadlines. Polite reminders that quickly turned more urgent. I read them in silence, my chest tightening each time. I knew exactly what they meant. The myth was cracking, but only where I could see it. The next dinner, Logan leaned back in his chair, swirling his drink, and casually said, "I'm thinking of buying the place outright. The investors open to it." He said it like it was inevitable, like it was already done. Mom gasped, hands clasped together, immediately launching into plans. How this would secure his future, how proud she was, how smart he'd always been. I sat there, nodding faintly, my mind racing. The truth pressed against my ribs, heavy and exhausting. Years of staying quiet. Years of fixing problems before they reached the surface. I had told myself it was easier this way. Kinder. Safer. If you've ever carried a truth that everyone around you refused to see, you know this feeling. That mix of frustration and fatigue. The loneliness of knowing something that would change everything. Drop a comment if this resonates. Then my mother turned to me, smiling thinly. "You know," she said, Women don't need to push so hard. Logan understands ambition. You should be more realistic. Something in me shifted. Not anger, clarity. I realized I was tired. Tired of carrying a secret that protected people who never protected me. Tired of shrinking so others could feel tall. I looked around the table and understood finally that silence wasn't kindness anymore. It was complicity. After that dinner, something inside me finally went quiet. Not numb, focused. The moment you stop trying to be understood is the moment you become dangerous in the calmest way possible. I went back to my routine. Early mornings, coffee that tasted burnt by the third sip, and screens filled with numbers that didn't care about family politics. Spreadsheets still needed reconciling. Payments still needed tracking. The work continued, steady and indifferent. Even as something fundamental had shifted inside me, I didn't confront Logan. I didn't call my mother. I knew better. Private conversations had a way of becoming rewritten stories, twisted into accusations of jealousy or bitterness. I wasn't interested in arguing my reality anymore. I wanted the truth to stand on its own, clean and undeniable. Mom's questions became sharper, more pointed. She asked about my apartment, my career, why I was still playing it safe. I answered politely but firmly, offering nothing extra. No explanations. No defenses. Boundaries don't need justification, and I was done over-explaining my life to people who never listened. The birthday dinner invitation came the following week. A reservation at the same restaurant chain Logan loved. Expensive enough to impress, familiar enough to feel like home to them. I knew what it was meant to be. Another stage, another performance celebrating his success. And I accepted immediately. Not out of obligation but clarity. This wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about embarrassing anyone or reclaiming stolen credit. It was about ending a pattern that had followed me my entire life. The pattern where I carried weight quietly so others could stay comfortable. I wasn't going to explode. I wasn't going to beg to be seen. I was going to let the truth speak in a room that had always refused to hear me. The night of the dinner, I walked in calmly. No dramatic outfit. No sharp words prepared. Just a simple dress, steady breath, and a folder tucked neatly into my bag. Not a weapon, proof so I said yes. I showed up on time. I dressed simply. And I waited, because for the first time in my life, I wasn't walking into that room as the quiet daughter. I was walking in with the truth. The restaurant was the kind my mom liked to show off. Soft lighting, crisp tablecloths, the kind of place where being there meant something about who you were. Everything felt curated, polished, performative. Even before anyone spoke, it was clear this dinner wasn't about connection. It was about being seen. Logan and Tara arrived late, of course. They always did. When they walked in, the energy shifted immediately. Tara's laugh carried across the room, loud and confident. Her hand firmly on Logan's arm like a claim. He soaked in the attention, offering easy smiles and apologies that no one actually wanted. Being late only made them feel more important. Conversation started innocently enough. Travel plans, work updates, surface-level chatter, but it didn't take long before the Penthouse made its first appearance. Tara mentioned the view. Logan added a comment about the building amenities. My mother leaned in, glowing, asking questions like she hadn't already memorized every detail. The word penthouse floated around the table like a badge of honor. Then my mother turned to me. "So, Harper," she said brightly, "any big changes in your life yet?" I shook my head lightly. "Nothing major." She smiled thinly, then delivered it. "I mean, Logan already lives in a penthouse. You're still in that same place." Laughter followed. Not cruel exactly, but dismissive. Familiar. The sound hit me differently this time. Not like a wound, but like confirmation. I felt strangely calm, like everything had finally lined up. "The penthouse?" I asked quietly. Logan didn't hesitate. "Yeah," he said, leaning back. "I own it." I nodded once. Then I reached into my bag and pulled out my phone. The table went silent. Not because they sensed what was coming, But because no one was used to me interrupting the script, I opened my email and slid the screen across the table. "That's interesting," I said evenly. "Because the property manager emailed me this morning about the late payments." Tara's smile froze. My mother frowned, confused. Logan laughed, sharp and forced. "That's not," I scrolled. 3 months behind. And that's after I covered the first 6. Have you ever had a moment where you finally spoke up after years of silence? Let me know in the comments. Why father shifted in his seat, suddenly fascinated by the tablecloth. My mother's confusion turned to anger. "What are you talking about?" she snapped. "I'm the investor," I said calmly. "The one you keep referencing." Logan stood up slightly, voice raised. "That's not fair. You said you'd help. This is just temporary." "I did help," I replied. "But I never agreed to be invisible forever." My mother turned on me. "You're embarrassing him. This isn't the place." "It's exactly the place," I said. "Public credit comes with public truth." My father finally spoke. "Let's all calm down. Families don't handle things like this." I looked at him, steady. "Families don't build success on one child's silence either." Then I set the boundary. "You have 1 month to catch up on payments. After that, the property goes back on the market." No one laughed. No one argued. The celebration was over. The illusion was gone. And for the first time, no one asked me to soften it. The truth had done what it needed to do. The days after that dinner felt strangely quiet. Not peaceful, just still. The kind of stillness that follows a storm when everything that could be said has already been said. My mom left voicemails. Controlled at first. Careful with her words. She sounded wounded, embarrassed more than sorry. There was no real apology. Just frustration wrapped in concern, and reminders that family matters should stay private. I listened once. I didn't call back. Logan texted. First it was defensive. Accusations dressed up as explanations. He said I blindsided him, that I should have handled it differently. Then the messages slowed. Then they stopped entirely. Silence replaced entitlement, and for the first time, it wasn't mine to carry. A week later, the property manager confirmed the move-out date. The penthouse would be vacated by the end of the month. No drama. No spectacle. Just paperwork and final walkthroughs. I chose not to chase the overdue payments. Closure mattered more than revenge. I had already taken back what was mine. My voice, my position, my peace. Family gatherings changed after that. Comparisons stopped. The jokes disappeared. Conversations became smaller, quieter, more honest. Some distance remained, but it was healthier than the closeness built on denial. I sold the penthouse a few months later and reinvested in something bigger. Not louder, just smarter. My own life upgraded the same way. Slowly. Intentionally. Privately. Better place. More flexibility. Less explaining. The biggest change wasn't financial. It was the relief of no longer carrying the truth alone. No more bracing myself at dinner tables. No more shrinking to keep others comfortable. I didn't win. I just stopped shrinking. And that made all the difference. Success doesn't need applause, and it definitely doesn't need permission. Sometimes the strongest move is simply standing still and letting reality speak for you. If you've ever been underestimated by the people closest to you, you're not alone. Share your story in the comments below, and hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Because every week, we're uncovering stories of people who stopped playing small and started living in their truth.